Hi, welcome to another IELTS essay writing video. Today we're looking at how to respond to an essay question that asks you for personal examples or personal experiences. If you find this video helpful, please like it and please visit my website at ielts.com. If you've watched my other videos, you know that when we make an effort to sound academic, we avoid using personal pronouns. So it does not sound very academic if we use words such as I and you, we, our, your. These are the kind of words that we would normally use in more informal writing. So often we try to word our sentences kind of passively so we don't have to use these words. So for example, instead of saying in this essay I am going to argue that, we would say something perhaps like it is argued that. So just as an example, it is argued that whatever, and this would be in place of I am arguing that, just to help us sound more academic. Now, of course, this creates kind of a problem, because if we're going into the examination with this strategy, what do we do when our essay question asks us for personal examples, as many essay questions do? So I thought today we could write an essay together from start to finish, and include a few personal examples and just go over how we can do that without falling into the trap of sounding informal or not very academic. So let's go to our essay question for today. Okay, here we have, if you want to know a person, look at their friends. So we start with a sort of a background statement. If you want to know a person, look at their friends. How accurate is this statement? What personal experiences have you had that support or refute this claim? Write a well-reasoned essay response with examples. Okay, now I'll just put the question up there. You can read it by yourself and have a quick think about it. Okay, so now let's just go over the meaning of the question. So firstly, the phrase, if you want to know a person, look at their friends, just means that often people associate with other like-minded people. So if you, I mean, for example, if you look at any high school, you will see most of the kids in the high school will group together based on certain common interests that they have. So the idea is, if you talk to a person's friends, you will know based on those friends what their values are. You will know the values of the person in question. There's another phrase in English that goes, birds of a feather flock together. Birds of a feather flock together, which just means that birds that are the same or that look the same, they kind of they stay together, and maybe that's in a way that's like human beings. If we share the same values, then those groups of people will become perhaps closer or friends to a certain extent. So if you want to know a person, look at their friends. Just means that you can know a person through the people that person associates with. Now, the second part is pretty straightforward. How accurate is this statement? What personal experiences have you had that support or refute this claim? Write a well-reasoned essay response with examples. So now looking at this statement, we would just have to come up with whether we're going to support this or refute this. Of course, we know that we're going to write an argument essay. This essay should be quite easy to write. Now, if I was writing a response to this, I would probably support this statement. And just a test-taking strategy I've shared in other videos is that it's much easier to either support something or refute something than to stand in the middle, not support, not refute, but just kind of be in the middle. So if you are responding to a question like this on your exam, I would strongly suggest that you, choose one or the other. Don't choose a middle position. So today I think I'm going to go with a support that often talking to a person's friends or getting to know their friends will really give you a strong sense that you know another person that hangs out with those people. So now if I was to think about some personal experiences, I would probably look at my high school experience, which I think is a good example of large groups of people that sort of group together based on different things. So for example, if you go to any high school in the world, that has a significant number of students, you will see that some students will befriend each other, and those students, maybe they like sports, and perhaps another group of students who are more into perhaps music or art or performance. These kinds of students might also form a group together. So I think that the area of interests is one way that knowing that you could know a person through knowing their friends. So for example, if we were talking about our friend Tom, and everybody knows Tom hangs out with people who play soccer, then then we even if we don't meet Tom, then we kind of have a picture of what kind of person Tom is. Okay, he's a sports guy and he plays soccer, so we would know something more about him just by looking at the friends that he hangs out with. Okay, so let's use that as our first example. I'm going to use that as my personal example, high school. Now the second example, I think we could look at something perhaps like the values that a person holds. So for example, personally, I went to a Catholic school, so the friends that you make going to a Catholic school are share the same values that you do, which are perhaps kind of traditional Catholic values. So that could be an example as well, is that certain values that people have are common among the people they consider friends. So if there was a group of people, they're all Catholics, and they associate with another person named Bob. Well, just knowing Bob's friends, we would kind of know that Bob is probably a like-minded person. He shares the same values as those people. So I think those two areas we could look at in this essay. One being the interests that a person and their friends share. The second being the values that a person shares. And in this essay, I'll include a few personal examples of my own. Okay, now we're going to use some personal pronouns. If you recall, we just went over a few up here, like I, you, we, our, your, because in this essay there's no way to avoid that. Now, we want to be careful to the degree that we use these words, because using them too much can really cause our essay to start to sound not very academic. And if you look at essays that students in Canada write when they're in grade 7, they use a lot of I, we, my, you, and I think using these in your IELTS essay will make your writing sound much more primitive than if you were to kind of word it in an academic manner. So if you were writing passively, this would be much more effective. So today we're going to use these words, but we are only going to use them to a small degree. So for example, I'm really only going to use them when I give my examples in the essay, because the essay question says we have to give personal examples, and I'm going to do that, but that doesn't mean that my entire essay is going to take on this sort of flavor of using these kinds of personal pronouns to describe my meaning. So what you'll see is that in the essay I'm only going to really use these words when I deliver my examples. Okay, so now that I have covered that, let's get to our response. One last read through the question. If you want to know a person, look at their friends. How accurate is this statement? Now right here, that's our thesis. I'm going to write in my response that this statement is accurate. What personal experiences have you had that support or refute this claim? Write a well-reasoned essay response with examples. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay, so now I think we should start perhaps with using that phrase I was explaining before, the birds of a feather phrase. So let me get that in here. You'll have to excuse the noise in the background. There's some construction outside my apartment today. So as goes the saying, birds of a feather flock together. Let's see. Now we want to just mention that people tend to group themselves based on things they have in common with others. So people tend to group, another word to say that, we're going to say congregate, group together with like-minded friends. Okay, now let's look at the alternate side for 1 second and just make a statement that if you were trying to find two friends that held opposite or contradicting opinions, this would be very difficult, don't you think? I mean, you very rarely see two friends, or never see two friends together that really have totally opposite interests, totally opposite beliefs. This just doesn't happen. So let's make a comment about that. So indeed, a person would be, I'm going to use the phrase hard-pressed, which means it would be difficult to find, hard-pressed to track down someone whose friends held beliefs his friends held beliefs at odds, which means like kind of opposite, at odds with his or her own. Okay? Indeed, a person would be hard-pressed to track down someone whose friends held beliefs at odds with his or her own. Of course, now we have our thesis. Now, the question said that you can, do you support or do you refute this statement? how accurate is this statement. So we'll just say, thus the idea that you can know someone by looking at his or her friends is supported. Okay, so we're just saying that we think this idea is something that that should be supported. Now let's include our outline sentence, which will show the areas of interests and values and how these are common among friends. So this will be proven by looking at two personal examples depicting how common interests and values are seen between friends. Actually, I'm going to change this a little bit to are I'll just make it really strong. In all cases, seen between friends. Okay, let's just take that last sentence one more time. So this will be proven by looking at two personal examples depicting how common interests and values are, in all cases, seen between friends. So we're just saying that friends always share interests to some degree and share values also to some degree. Okay, now let's get to our paragraph about interests that people share. And I'm going to include the example of my high school in here, so I'm just going to think about that for a second. Okay, so let's start with something perhaps like, firstly, within any institution, I'm going to start to kind of include the, we're looking at the idea of an organized school of some kind, or an organized place that has large numbers of people. So we'll say it's an institution of significant size. Significant size. Students tend to I think a good word to use here would be something, to show that the students are dividing themselves into different groups based on their interests. So let's use segregate. So students tend to segregate themselves into groups of friends based on their interests. Okay. Firstly, within any institution, so basically at any kind of school or educating body of significant size, students tend to, which means usually, segregate, which is to divide themselves into groups of friends based on their interests. For example, okay, now here I'm going to start using my personal pronouns, as you will see. So I'm going to say during my high school years, students interested in sports always associated with other students interested in sports. Okay, I think that sentence is pretty straightforward. Now let's say that this is not only for sports, but for all areas of interest. So let's say the same phenomenon. The same phenomenon was true of students interested in other areas as well. So it's not only sports, but also, you know, music or acting, or perhaps students that are maybe into mathematics or history. You know, these kinds of students sort of tend to group together based on their interests. Now, here we want to include a discussion sentence which shows sort of the link between my example of high school and our topic sentence, which is just that students tend to group together based on their interests. So let me write it something like this: by speaking to any member within one of, oops, using numbers here, within one of these groups. Actually, I'm going to change that. Another word we can use for group is clique. And I guess I don't have to put that in quotes. One of these cliques of friends. Okay, so by speaking to any member within one of these cliques of friends, a person could know, a person could quickly become attuned to the interests of the group as a whole. Now, we'll just go over that sentence with you one more time. Okay. So we gave the example of how students segregate or divide themselves into different groups. And then we just showed how this sort of relates to our thesis a little bit by speaking to any member within one of these cliques of friends. By speaking to anybody in these groups, a person could quickly become attuned to the interests of the group as a whole. Attune means to sort of to know of. So here we're just saying that if you talk to one person in the group, you will get to know the interests of everybody in the group. So this, you can see the connection between this and our thesis is that, you know, if you talk to the friends of a friend, you will get to know that friend indirectly, kind of, because interests are shared. Okay, now we got to link this back to our thesis directly. So easy one here. We'll just say thus knowing a person by looking at their friends is a theory that holds true. Thus, knowing a person by looking at their friends, that's a link back to our thesis. And again, we're just reiterating, we're stating again, is a theory that holds true. Okay, so we're just saying that this theory was clear in my high school experience and is for this reason something that should be supported. Now let's go to our second example. Now we were going to talk about values here and the values that friends tend to share. Now I'm thinking of a personal experience. I would probably go with a few childhood friends that I grew up with, and I think that by including them as an example, we can show how, you know, the thinking that people develop as they grow up is often a process that happens in connection with other people. So for example, if I think about my childhood friends and the people they are today as adults, my thinking and their thinking is very similar because, you know, we grew up together, we grew up in the same part of the world. We had, you know, we had many conversations as anybody does with their friends over the years that we spent growing up, and this has shaped our our theories, and our outlook on life and our values. And so I think that we can show here that that people, that their ideas kind of merge together as they grow, particularly from childhood when you're sort of in an innocent state. Your ideas kind of merge with the ideas of other people. Now, I think I will probably maybe make it a bit more specific and talk about perhaps the political opinions that my friends and I share, because politics in many ways is a measure of a person's values and what they believe. So I'm going to say here as my example the idea that the political values I hold are almost identical to the political values of my very close friends from when I was a child. And I'm going to try to link in the idea that this came as a result of the circumstances that we grew up in, and as well as the various conversations that we had together over the years that helped to shape thinking patterns and the people that we became as adults. So okay, so let's first introduce the point, which is values. So let's say something like, in addition to interests, often basic values are shared between groups of friends. Okay, so values are shared between groups of friends. Okay, I'm going to use two childhood friends as my example. So take my two childhood best friends as examples. Now I'll just make a quick comment that even though today we are not living in the same part of the world, our opinions and the way that we face life is still very similar. So although we now live in different parts of the world as adults, I'm going to just pull in politics here. The political discussions we had over and I guess I would say maybe around 15 years, maybe a little bit longer, but over the 15 years or so, no, 15 or so years we spent growing up together helped to shape and merge our ideas. Merge just is a word that means to kind of come together. Okay, now let me just review this and make sure I didn't type in a mistake. Although we now live in different parts of the world as adults, the political discussions we had over the 15 or so years we spent growing up together helped to shape and merge our ideas. Okay, so the example is just that that friends, the ideas of friends tend to merge into one. And I think most would agree with this statement. I would agree that most ideas, I think, with long-term friends, especially friends that grow up as children together, tend to merge and become quite similar. I mean, of course, there are lots of differences too, but for the sake of our IELTS exam, we want to just focus and make this as strong as we can. So we're just going to talk about the ideas that support our thesis. So Okay, so now we've talked about how the ideas of my friends and I have merged into one uh, in the political arena. Now let's go on to discuss this a little bit. Um, so I'm just going to make that a little bit clearer. So in effect, our opinions grew together as one. As one. Okay, and I truly believe, now I'm just going to make a statement that, you know, if today, if someone was to speak to these two close friends of mine about political issues, they would, in many ways, know my personal political stance on different issues. And you know, this idea sort of supports our thesis in that you can know a person through their friends. So, and I truly believe, we'll say that anyone who had a political discussion with either of these two people would have a key understanding of my position too. Okay, let's just review that. Oops. Okay. I'm just reading from here. In effect, our opinions grew together as one. And I truly believe that anyone who had a political discussion with either of these two people would have a key understanding of my position too. Okay, so we're just showing the idea that you can know a person through their friends. Now let's close this, link back to our thesis. This shows, perhaps we can say, why the belief that a person can be known through their friends is accurate. This shows why the belief that a person can be known through their friends is accurate. Again, I'll just remind you that in this paragraph, you only saw me use personal pronouns really in the example. I used one in the discussion as well to kind of link them a little bit stronger, but you know, in the topic sentence, in this concluding sentence, you don't see any more references, personal references using personal pronouns like I. Okay, so I'm trying to keep it sort of localized and contained somewhat, and this makes the entire essay sound a bit more academic, as you can see. Now let's go on to our concluding paragraph. Okay, so now we just want to first summarize our two ideas. The first being that interests are shared between friends and values are shared between friends. And because of this, you can know a person's interests and values just by looking at their friends. So basically, the idea presented in our thesis has been proven. So let's try something like, it is clear that if you want... no, let's not use you here. It is clear that if a person wants to know someone else, they can look at their friends for an accurate portrait. Portrait just means like it's sort of like a clear picture of that person. It is clear that if a person wants to know someone else, they can look at their friends, for an accurate portrait. Oh, this is misleading. They can look at this person's friends for an accurate portrait. Okay. Now, this last sentence, I'm actually going to make a small reference back to our examples. As you know, in your concluding sentence, in your concluding paragraph, you want to finish with a recommendation or a prediction of some kind, which is just like a kind of a guess for the future or a guess for the situation. Now, here I want to finish by making it clear that I feel strongly that my personal experiences are not only mine. So the idea that other people also have experienced having friends that think and act and believe things that are very, very similar to their own thoughts and their own beliefs. So basically, I just want to say that the examples that I have presented here in this essay are kind of universal. They're examples that apply to everyone across all spectrums, across all cultures. You know, that like-minded people will tend to group together based on their beliefs or on their interests. So I'm going to finish with saying it is assumed most people reflect the collective interests and values in the same way I do. Of their friends, we'll say, of their friends. Okay. It is assumed most people reflect the collective interests and values of their friends in the same way I do. Now, what you can see is even though we use the pronoun I still try to keep it to a minimum. For example, I have here, it is assumed. I didn't say I assume most people reflect the collective interests. No, I just wrote it is assumed. You know, it sounds more academic. I kind of minimize the amount of personal pronouns I use. And I think it finishes the essay quite nicely. It is assumed most people reflect the collective interests and values of their friends in the same way I do. So we're just saying that the examples I have given before about high school, about my two childhood friends, these are values these are experiences that are common throughout the world. It's not only me. All right, let's have a read through the entire essay and make sure we've included lots of cohesion and make sure that our grammar is correct, our spelling is correct, punctuation is correct, and that our reasons are strong. So from the question, if you want to know a person, look at their friends. How accurate is the statement? What personal experiences have you had that support or refute this claim? Write a well-reasoned essay response with examples. Okay. As goes the saying, comma, birds of a feather flock together, comma. People tend to congregate with like-minded friends. Indeed, A person would be hard-pressed to track down someone whose friends held beliefs at odds with his or her own. Thus, the idea that you can know someone by looking at his or her friends is supported. This will be proven by looking at two personal examples depicting how common interests and values are, in all cases, seen between friends. Okay, first supporting paragraph. Firstly, within any institution of significant size, students tend to segregate themselves into groups of friends based on their interests. For example, during my high school years, students interested in sports always associated with other students interested in sports. The same phenomenon was true of students interested in other areas as well. By speaking to any member within one of these cliques of friends, a person could quickly become attuned to the interests of the group as a whole. Thus, knowing a person by looking at their friends is a theory that holds true. Okay, very nice. In addition to interests, often basic values are shared between groups of friends. Take my two childhood best friends as examples. Although we now live in different parts of the world as adults, the political discussions we had over the 15 or so years we spent growing up together helped to shape and merge our ideas. In effect, our opinions grew together as one, and I truly believe that anyone who had a political discussion with either of these two people would have a key understanding of my position too. This shows why the belief that a person can be known through their friends is accurate. So we see there's the link back to our thesis once again. It is clear that if a person wants to know someone else, they can look at this person's friends for an accurate portrait. It is assumed most people reflect the collective interest and values of their friends in the same way I do. Okay, so there you have it. As you can see, even though we're giving personal examples, we still use personal pronouns, I, you, our. We use these in a minimum. I only use them in maybe 4 places. I think I used it once in the thesis, 2 times in each example, and one time at the very end here. So you can see it's still at a minimum, and we do this in an effort to maintain the academic tone of our essay. I hope that video was helpful. Thank you for listening.